chamber music, string quartets, organ, conductors all the way to the bottom. See here, Reverend Gary Davis was a labor of hate, because I hated the way old important recordings were not being reissued, they were not being published, and the way they were made sonically they were quite disgusting because they were filtered. They were supposed to sound like quiet LPs, noiseless vinyl. These were shellacs, so to get rid of the beautiful tone just for the sake of having a quiet playback was disgusting. So. I was asked around 1990 to write liner notes for 1980 for an LP. And by 1985, I wanted to do a book on Friedman, Ignaz Friedman, the pianist. So I was going around Europe, and in Copenhagen there was a record label that put out someone who was a friend of Friedman's who had played concerts with him. And I went to the label and we discussed Friedman, and I said, why don't you do his complete recordings? No one has done it. He said, yes, that's a good idea. And I said, well, I could produce it for you, which I've never done before. And the label said, well, okay, go ahead. So that's how I started. So it turned into a 6 LP set of his complete recordings known then. Since then, more have turned up. So that's how it started. Then I did liner notes for a British label called Pearl, and asked to do projects. And I learned very early on that if you had called before lunchtime, the head of the company might not accept your project. But then after lunch, after he's had at least 2 ales in him, you could ask for anything and he would approve it. So that was an important step. And did about 100 projects for them over a few years. But then there was one project I wanted to do of Vitelka Freund, who is a Brahms pupil, and he approved it, but we needed more text information. And he said, well, it would cost us too much to have an extra page inserted. Instead of being a 12-page booklet, it would be 16 pages. And I looked it up, and the cost of printing would have run them about $80 to have a booklet that was just with an extra page. So I did it, but it so disgusted me, I thought, why do I have to even work for them? I'll do it on my own. So I created a label, and it became eventually a non-profit. So we became non-profit, we were given that status, and that's how I started the Arbiter. I wanted to have a space just for musical geniuses, because most of the other labels, anyone old, it's okay. That would be a historic recording, but that doesn't mean it's always good. You get good performers and bad performers at any time and period. So I thought there should be a label just to get the real geniuses, the ones who are so important, and many of them have no market potential. And that's how I started the Arbiter wing, but I had all the experience of hunting down the people in the past and trying to hear through their ears. Because anyone could judge from your ears the way you hear how music's played today, but that doesn't mean anything. If you can find out how they're playing differently, if you could observe what they're doing and then try to find out why they're doing it that way, then you get closer to what it's about. And I try to put this in the liner notes. Yeah, the best experience, I was 11, I was with an aunt in San Francisco and her 2 daughters, my cousins. They're older than me, just a few years older. I'd heard about the hippies during that summer, and I was anxious to see them because they looked really exotic. There were a few in New York, and I wanted to go where the epicenter was, which was Haight-Ashbury, a neighborhood in San Francisco. So I asked Aunt Dorothy, and she said, "No, you can't go there. That's dangerous. They're all filled with drugs. We're not going to go anywhere near there. But can't we sit in the car and just look outside at them?" No way. I'm going to take you and the girls to the museum. That's in the park. That's what you should be doing." So we went to the museum, and it was a great museum. Didn't get to see the hippies. And after the museum, it's a beautiful park along the bay with the Golden Gate Bridge nearby. And we're walking, and then all of a sudden in the distance there's a very weird sound, something we'd never heard in our lives. What is that? And I said, "Let's follow it." And is it this way? Yeah, and it was getting closer and closer, and it was getting more distorted and weird, and we'd never heard anything like it. Then it got quite loud, and we looked, and we're at the foot of a hill. At the top of a hill, and we looked down, and there were about several hundred hippies and Hell's Angels with a band playing called the Morticians. It was an amazing sound. I was just stunned by the distorted guitar and the amplitude, because before that it was just the Beatles and the crappy Beach Boys and Elvis and whatever was around then in the pop scene. So this was burgeoning then. In the beginning, you had to make a tape of any disc, whether it's shellac, 78 RPM, or vinyl. You have to put it on reel-to-reel tape. Then once you have it on the tape, which is done in real time, you could put it through different processors like an equalizer, and to get different sound. It had to be done in real time. But with digital software like Isotope, it's another game altogether, because you could do a 20-minute track. Instead of taking 20 minutes, you could do it in a half a minute to get it altered and to have the EQ there. So that was a great development for getting the sound. Also, I found by accident on one recording that wouldn't play well under any circumstance, that you had to find that the place where you are supposedly have the best sound in the groove is not necessarily the case, because records are cut differently at different times, even by different companies. So you have to find a way, which I did, and I keep it as a confidential matter, how to get to the hot spot. Each groove wall in a 78 has something like I would call a hot spot. If you access it, the sound opens up in a way you cannot believe possible. So even acoustic records, which are supposedly with a minimal response range in terms of from bass to treble, at the treble it supposedly cuts off at a certain point and you can't hear those notes audible. They are audible, even the room tone, the space, the projection of the instrument. They sound almost electric, practically electric recordings, because if you get that hot spot, that's where the sound really is. So most of the theories about engineering old recordings and restoring them are based on faulty playbacks, so that they have to try to artificially enhance it somehow with EQ, or to filter it away to make it quieter. But getting the hot spot is usually a quieter event, because you bring up more signal and a fuller signal, so there's less need to do noise reduction, unless it's a very worn copy. And you have an immediate presence. So this we've had good luck with records dating back to 1903, where you could even hear an engineer in the background saying "play," and before a pianist in 1903 plays a Brahms piece, Ilona Ibenschutz. So that wasn't audible before. And with the electrically recorded 78s, they sound like their early 50s reel-to-reel recordings, which are excellent sound, incomparable really. So these things have made a big difference in getting the 78s and even vinyl to sound better than they ever could have been imagined. around 1970, late 1970, there was a group, Hot Tuna. It was a spin-off from Jefferson Airplane. And they were doing their takes on Reverend Gary Davis's pieces like Hesitation Blues and Death Don't Have No Mercy. So I thought that was quite nice music. And then there was a radio show on Columbia University station WKCR on Saturday mornings. And the guy running it was an incredible record collector. And one day he did a show on Davis and I was knocked out.
Had my way. If I had my way,
and then shortly afterwards, there was an announcement that he had just played a concert and that he was kind of old. It might be his last one. So I was panicking. I thought, oh, it was terrible. I missed it. This is terrible. And they played some more, which was even better of his. So a few days later in the Village Voice newspaper, there was a listing of an upcoming concert at Brooklyn College in the cafeteria, student union, of Davis on a school night. So I got my best friend, who was also trying to learn the guitar like me, and he dug up his girlfriend and her friend, and we went like an hour and a half on the subway from Flushing to outer Brooklyn. First half was really good. He was 75, kind of frail, but so much there, it was remarkable. And there was a big scene around the lunch table because there wasn't a backstage, it was in a cafeteria. So everyone's sitting at a lunch table, and after he finished his set, he was blind, so he was led to a certain table. And that they were starting to question him, Reverend Davis, where do you live? I was thinking, my God, he could be living in the South somewhere, or Chicago, Detroit. Who knows, Philadelphia. He said, I live in Jamaica, Queens. So next question, someone asked him, do you teach guitar, Rev? Yes, I do. My students charge more than me. I charge $5 a lesson. And some people were gasping. And then someone asked for his phone number. So he gave it. I wrote it down. I was just standing there observing. Then I walked over to Larry Breezer, his lead boy, and asked, could I lead Reverend Davis on for the next part? He said, sure, go right ahead. So I walked over to him and I said, I'm Alan, and I'll take you up. He said, oh. And then while we're walking, I asked him, could you play I Belong to the Band? So he gets on and he played it.
He was a mighty man. Where you get your liquor from, man, downtown? Combed his head in the frying pan. Where you get your liquor from, man? Watch his face in a wagon wheel. Where you get your liquor from, man, downtown? Died with a toothache in his heel. Tell me where you get your liquor from, man? Sally, where you get it?
It was an amazing night.
All you beautiful woman, you drunken clown, tell me where you get your liquor from.
Days later, the sun was out. It was a school morning. It was such a beautiful day. My father had gone to work, so I'd have to go to school like a good boy. I had just turned 15. And I thought, it's too beautiful today. I can't go to school. What for? I don't learn anything there. And I had about $6. Why don't you call up the Davises? Let's find out. Maybe you could get a lesson. So I dialed the number really nervously, and the phone answers. Who are you? What do you want? Well, I'm Alan. What? Where are you calling for a lesson? Yes, yes. Well, he's home today. You know how to get here? And she explained. You take the bus, you go down 174th Street, you get off by the flower florist, and we're a block back on the corner of 100 and 109th Avenue, and around 174th Street. I think it was that. So he was there, and he had a guitar, brought out a little baby Martin. And I played for him buck dance, which I thought, well, he'll just show me a few details and I'll have a good idea of how to do it. And he demanded I learn every single note. He said, stop me if you don't understand something. So it took 5 hours. He gave me 5 hours and I learned the piece note by note that way. It was a revelation. And to hear that sound and to have that kind of a musical contact, that changed my life. I don't like to plan ahead so much or to predict anything because life and music and culture are totally unpredictable, so you never know what you're going to encounter next year even. It's hard to plan ahead that much. I have maybe 5 or 10 or 20 projects even in mind. And then there'll be world music projects, whatever comes along. I hope to do something from Java, a few more from Japan, other countries, American gospel. As these things happen, we're all ears and ready to go. But it's totally unpredictable. You could never have any idea of what's going to happen, but I just hope to be ready to capture or to help others capture these people who have what it takes.